A home inspection report in Ottawa can run you anywhere from 15 to 45 pages, and the second you open it, it can be flat out terrifying. The report reads like a giant list of problems. It basically is a giant list of problems, and especially if you're a first-time buyer, it can be hard to know where to start with this thing. But what a lot of people don't realize is that almost all of it is normal or minor maintenance items that are pretty easy to negotiate. The real danger of the stuff that you find on a home inspection is in a small handful of items that are buried there amongst the stuff that doesn't matter. They can cost you big money. Today, I'm going to show you 9 of the main home inspection items that I watch out for, which ones are a relatively cheap fix, which ones are worth seriously thinking over if you find them, and which ones you should just flat out walk away from. Now, the first thing to know is an inspection report is not a straight pass or fail test on the house. The findings themselves are rarely the deal breaker. What makes or breaks whether a deal goes forward after the home inspection is usually the seller's willingness to deal with the items in the report. Because when a problem turns up, you've really got 3 options. Either the seller fixes it, the seller credits you in some way or drops the price of the house, or you walk away from the deal entirely. So as I go through these 10 items, the question is never just how bad is the issue, although that's definitely a big part of it. It's what happens if the seller won't touch it or deal with it. And for a few of these, even a credit isn't worth it because the real problem isn't the repair bill in some cases. It's that this issue will stop you from getting financing or insurance or something like that. So in most cases, it's not worthwhile to go through with the deal, even if you love the house at that point. A quick example as to why this matters, I came across a couple who bought an older home in Ottawa's West End a few years ago. It was a couple that had walked into an open house I was hosting in the neighborhood, and they had waived their conditions to win a bidding war in 2021. The inspection that they skipped would have caught a moving foundation and an old oil tank, 2 of the things that are on the list here. The place looked perfect on paper, but it cost them tens of thousands of dollars to deal with these issues after the fact. And I say that just so you understand, the inspection isn't an obstacle to the deal going through. It's a critical part of the process, and it's there to protect you. Now, item number 1 to watch out for is any sort of structural movement in the foundation of the house. This is a surprisingly common one in the city of Ottawa. And how the inspector is going to identify whether or not this is going on is if they see horizontal cracks, not small vertical cracks. Those are usually the result of regular settling, but horizontal cracks, especially if it's accompanied by a bowing wall or doors that don't sit squarely. That's actual movement of the foundation, not just the normal settling that happens over years. Now, they're not going to be able to tell you conclusively, unless it's very obvious, whether or not there's structural movement going on, but they are going to recommend that you get a structural engineer in to make a report. Now, if it's just a minor fix, a small crack that needs some epoxy to go in it, a credit or a discount off the price is probably sufficient here. But anything that requires excavation or underpinning can get expensive very quickly. And it's actually pretty difficult to understand what the scope of work is going to be before they start excavating the foundation. So if it's a big structural movement, this is usually one that you're going to walk away from. Number 2 is a history of water in the basement. And what you're going to look for here is effervescence, which is that white powdery stuff that you'll see on foundations sometimes, staining or a sump pump that's always running, or an actual flood record, which you can find. There's actually a great site, I'll put the link in the video here, to Geo Ottawa, and this will actually tell you whether or not the address you're looking at is in a known floodplain area. This is a great site to check when you're looking at buying any Ottawa property. In Ottawa, between the spring melts that we get and our storms, chronic water is a recurring issue, not a one-time fix. Now, if it's just minor grading or something that needs to be done to make sure the water is running properly away from the house, that's easy enough to fix with a credit or, again, a price discount. But if the water keeps finding its way back in, there's no credit that's going to make that disappear. So it's often a good idea to walk away if there's signs of extensive water damage in the basement. Number 3 is also somewhat water related, and that's a failing sewer line. In Ottawa's older neighborhoods, the pipe running from the house out to the street is often made of old clay, and tree roots can get in and crack it. A home inspector can run a camera down there, a sewer scope, and if it's collapsing, you're digging up the yard to replace it, which is well into the 5 figures. Now, a credit can make this workable, but if a seller won't budge on the price, this is one that is worth walking over as well. Now, number 4 is actually one that I find most people, even first-time buyers, are looking out for and are kind of scared of when they're heading into the home inspection. Rightly so, and that is mold. This is usually left behind by water, of course, and a bit of surface mold is pretty normal and pretty cleanable, especially if it's in a bathroom or a moist area, something like that. But mold behind the walls can be a health issue, and it can spook your insurer when you go to get home insurance in the house. The attic is another place you want to look out for this. If there's any water that's been gradually making its way through the shingles and getting into the attic area onto the wood, that's something that can lead to bigger issues down the road. This is something that you want to make sure the seller will remediate or pay the cost to remediate, because the licensed companies you have to hire to clean this out are pretty expensive. If they won't do that and they're not willing to give the credit and it's widespread, this is something that is worth walking over. Number 5 is outdated wiring, and this can be a couple of different types of wiring, but the most common ones are going to be knob and tube or aluminum. Now, the thing that a lot of first-time buyers miss is the real problem isn't the wiring itself. Like the knob and tube actually is pretty unsafe, but the bigger issue, especially with the aluminum, is that the insurance can become an issue. A lot of companies, if you discover active knob and tube or any aluminum wiring where the ends haven't been pigtailed with copper, they're going to price the insurance so high that it changes your monthly math, or they're just not going to give you insurance. So before you negotiate a dollar, confirm that you can actually get an insurance policy. This is worth a call to an insurance company before your conditional period ends, because if you can't get insured, even if you get a big discount off the price, your mortgage doesn't kick in unless you have valid home insurance and you can't close. So no seller's credit is going to fix that. If it's an extensive enough issue that you can't get home insurance, this is one that you should also consider walking away over. Number 6, this is also common in older homes, although I'm finding more and more they've been replaced already, is a buried or aging oil tank. An old tank can get you declined outright for insurance, and a leak turns into an environmental cleanup if they've had any issues with that. Oil heating used to be much more common in Ottawa, but now it's almost exclusively like natural gas or electrical. But this doesn't necessarily have to be a deal breaker. The clean version of this, the best case scenario, is you ask the seller to remove it and remediate it before closing. If they refuse, this is another one where it's worth considering walking away or at least negotiating a huge credit, because it can be a real pain to get this stuff disposed of. Number 7 is something that's pretty common in older homes as well. It's asbestos or vermiculite. Now, vermiculite is a type of insulation that was often used in the attic in older homes. Asbestos you can find in old tiles or pipe wraps or even older popcorn ceilings. It's only a hazard when it's disturbed. So if you're not going to be extensively renovating the home, it might just be a credit, or you might just be okay with it. Like I've had buyers go through with sales when they identified asbestos, but they didn't have any plans to renovate the home. They just knew that when they did go to renovate it, they needed to hire someone who was able to handle the hazardous material that comes along with dealing with asbestos. But if your whole plan is to gut the place, you're now paying for specialized removal before you even move in, so you've got to be able to negotiate a credit here. Number 8 is major systems in the house at the end of their life. Now, I'm using this as a catch-all for things like the roof, the furnace, the air conditioning, and the windows. Any one of these is normal, but they do tend to fail all around the same time. And if that ends up being the case, you can get into the high five figures pretty easily, especially with windows. Windows are quite expensive. Now, this one can be a little weird to negotiate because a lot of these are fairly obvious if you do the showing. So if you've done a couple showings on the property, you see that the furnace is older, you see that the windows are maybe starting to lose some of their effectiveness. Maybe there's some shingles curling on the roof. All of this stuff is kind of noticeable from the get-go. And so oftentimes when you're going to negotiate it, the seller will be like, well, you should have noticed this when you went through the first time. So this one really is discretionary. If you are aware that the systems are older, there's a good chance that the offer that you put in originally reflected those older systems. But if there's something that surprises you, like if the roof looked like it was fine, but then you get there and you realize there's a bunch of moisture actively coming in from the outside, then suddenly you're in a position to negotiate. So it's very case by case in this one, but it's very unlikely, unless all of this stuff is failing at once and it's all kind of a surprise to you, that you're going to walk away over this. There's usually some sort of compromise that you can come to with a reasonable seller. Number 9 is another kind of catch-all category, and this is unpermitted work or undisclosed work. So a basement that was finished, or an addition or a rewire where there's no permit on file. No permit means that there's no guarantee it's up to code, and it can therefore be a bit of a liability when you move in. Now with this one, again, it's pretty discretionary. See if you can find the permits first of all. They're often available from the city of Ottawa. If there are no permits, verify if it was done by the appropriate contractor, and call in that contractor of your own if you need to verify whether or not everything's up to code. Because if you do run into a big issue that was caused by the DIY work that the person did, it can lead to issues with insurance and that kind of thing, which is something that you don't want. So find as much documentation as you can. If things feel off and there's a bunch of homeowner work that they have no permits for and it looks like it was pretty major, that can be a reason to walk away unless you're someone who really knows what you're doing with home renovation and that kind of thing. So again, the inspection finding is rarely a deal breaker in and of itself. It's the negotiation after the fact that dictates whether or not this is a deal that's going to go forward or one that you're going to have to walk away from. Are they going to give you a credit? Are they going to fix it themselves? Or are you going to walk away? Those are usually the three options. Most of the things you negotiate or you just kind of deal with on your own if they're smaller maintenance items. The true walkaways are the ones where even a credit isn't going to help you because you can't get insured or financed. Whether it's a foundation in need of excavation, or a collapsed sewer line, or an old oil tank that they won't remove, or wiring no insurer will touch. Those you should let be somebody else's problem, and it's usually a good reason to consider walking away from the property. I hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.